To get back, sports, regain my confidence, get me grounded again, try to change my life. But I'll go back into training track. So I was like, okay, I need something else. What did I always wanted to do that I never got a chance to? And I was always into martial art, watching martial art films, action films. So I said, look, I'm free right now. How about I just work for free? I'll come in, I'll just work for free. Just give it a go. If you like me, great. If you don't, at least I know I gave it a try. And I did that for no pay.
Welcome to Before We Get There, the podcast where we explore people's journeys, how they got to where they are, what keeps them pushing forward, and where they eventually want to get to. I'm your host, Nicholas Braman, and today I'm joined by Kenneth Tay. Kenneth is a BJJ black belt, co-founder of Trinity Combat Sports in Suzhou, China, and currently coaches at Field Assembly in Singapore. We discussed his interesting life story, from living in China and Australia, how he dealt with mental health issues through martial arts, how he founded the first jiu-jitsu gym in Suzhou, and much more. I also want to let you know that there are some audio issues in this episode, but they're sporadic. So don't worry if you hear some glitches. Enjoy the show. I wanted to start off with because something that we have bonded over is the experience of living and working in China. So maybe you can start off by sharing how you ended up being in Suzhou and Shanghai.
I was studying there, well, at least I'm trying to. And I wasn't exactly too productive there. And in short, actually, I had lived in China for 2 years, in about 95, 96, because my dad was just posted to Suzhou during the time where the Chinese economy was opening up and they were encouraging a lot of foreign investment. And his company, basically because Suzhou has a massive investment from Singapore. So when they lived in Suzhou but studied in Shanghai, stayed there for 2 years, and eventually my parents sent us back to Singapore because my parents wanted us to continue our education in Singapore. And I was doing uni in Australia there, and was super productive there. So this was like not 20 years down the road, and they still living there. And then I tried to convince us that we should come check out. And so went over to be with the family. I went there because by this time I wasn't really using much Chinese in Australia, and I'm studying Chinese again.
I always say that I'm glad that I lived in China before I moved to Singapore, because Singapore is just a walk in the park compared to how things are in China. When you went there for the first time when you were younger, what were some of the big differences that from growing up in Singapore?
Wow. It was definitely a culture shock for me. By the time I was young, and I was like early puberty, I was still trying to figure out our come from a typical Asian family. Parents pretty sheltered, I would say. So like, we were pretty developed, and when I first moved to Suzhou, it's not as developed as Shanghai, and it was just a culture shock. And I remember the first week there, I just hated it. And I was like, oh, why am I here? Why did my parents bring me here? I don't like it. Like, restaurants would close at 8 p.m. By 7:30, 7:45, you get there, they're like, oh, mail, if you order, they'll tell you, oh, they're out. Because they just wanted to pack up and go home early. And food wasn't great. I really did enjoy my time there, but it really helped me grow there, because eventually living in Suzhou, there was really no good internet there. Time for our age group, because my brother and I were older and were for younger kids. My parents had no choice, had to send us to an international school in Shanghai. And because Suzhou and Shanghai about at least 100 kilometers apart, and at that time there was no high-speed railway, the highways weren't, and we had to save boarding school. And I basically, at primary 6, had to just figure out how on the spot without my there. And then so many different kids from different countries. When in Singapore, it's pretty much pre-sheltered, right? Just go to school, come home, do your assessment, hanging out with your family, hanging out with your schoolmates. And over there, all of a sudden, without my parents, just just figure out. So what's culture? Yeah. But it was eye-opening because it really taught me how to learn to grow up quick, maybe to grow up a little bit too. Yeah. And just learn how to communicate with people from different backgrounds.
That's interesting because I think that in Singapore, it's quite common to live with your parents, even when you're an adult, up until you get your BTO and you finally move out. Some people I know even live with their parents after they're married.
Yeah.
Lived with one of their parents. How was it and of course, I think being in an international school exposed to a lot more people of different backgrounds is a whole other aspect of it. But was that difficult for your parents to do that, or were they happy to send you on your way?
100%. My mom crying, dropping off at school, but yeah, kudos to them, man. Did what they had to do to try to keep the family together, because my mom was adamant that she wanted the whole family together as a unit rather than my dad alone in China. And we are stuck here in Singapore, and then he comes back and visits. My mom was adamant about keeping the family unit together. And they would, every weekend, my mom or my dad would drive from Suzhou to Shanghai, which at that time was a long drive, man. It was like 3 hours to drive, and pick us up, bring us back to Suzhou on Sunday. They'll drive us back to Shanghai, go to school, and then just repeat. Yeah. Just so that the family could be together. Yeah.
I had a similar experience because when I was 15, my parents moved a 5-hour drive away across the mountains. I ended up staying for one full school year by myself where we were originally living, but I just rented a room from a family that we didn't know from beforehand or anything. And I was just on my own for a year.
Wow.
And for me, it was really hard to move back in for my final year of high school with them after having that independence the year before that. Did you have that experience?
I know what you mean, man. I know what you mean. How old were you then?
I was 15 the year it was sophomore or junior year of high school. So from 15 to 16, I was living on my own. And then 16 to 17, I was back with my parents. And it was not quite as extreme as from Singapore to China, but it was from the suburban Seattle area, which was just not a huge city, but it's classic, a fairly big city in the US, to where they moved, which was this tiny town on the other side of the mountains, which had 1,500 people and one stoplight. I think my high school in Seattle was 1,500 students. And so I went from that to the whole town being 1,500 people. So that was a big change. I think in the end, it was good for me, and I'm glad I had the experience, but it wasn't easy or fun at the time for the most part. So then you have to come back to Singapore to do your NS?
Yeah, so basically, my dad sent us back. One reason was for national service, and they wouldn't let him do Chinese university, Jiao Tong Daxue, which I'm sure you know, is a really good university. And we were just trying to defer and let him do 1 year university. And then after that, he'll go back to Singapore. And then maybe after his NS, he'll come back again. Basically, couldn't get that done. So my brother went back first. And I think my dad sent me back first because his idea was all right, I'm at school right now. And at that time, he was thinking, China was probably up. And so we can settle down in school and probably start my process on O levels and stuff, right? So he sent us back first, and when I came to Singapore, I ended up staying in boarding school in Singapore. And lo and behold, my dad ended up staying another 20 years in China.
Wow. So how about the school experience? Because I think especially at that time, it's not like Singapore where you have a lot of people like myself who have immigrated here and we're not on the big expat packages, but China has always, you have a lot of the expats there have drivers, they have full-time live-in eyes and help. Yeah. Were the classmates that you went with, did you have a hard time connecting with them or relating to them, or was it pretty easy to make friends?
I think there was a bit of the international school that I went in, it was a really new international school. So I was one of the youngest, literally one of the youngest. Maybe the school maybe had 200 to 300 students max. The school right now is massive. It's basically Shanghai Zhongxue, Shanghai for the local division, and then they have an international division like Hotifu. And I went in there probably maybe the second year of their program, and they were still trying to apply for the IB certification and stuff, trying to figure things out. First few months were definitely tough. At least first half a year to a year was tough. Yeah. From Singapore, my Chinese wasn't very good, even though it's an international school. Majority of my schoolmates were from Hong Kong, Taiwan, Macau, Korean, Japanese. I think I was forced to figure out how to basically learn to communicate with people from so many different backgrounds at really my formative years. I was 12 at the time. So literally going through puberty and trying to figure all of that out. But luckily, generally the schoolmates were nice, and eventually some of them were like enough to take me under, maybe consider me a little brother. And I also had a brother that was in the same school as me, at least for the first year. Yeah, with my older brother to fall back on.
And I think one issue that's quite common with expats is that they live in their own bubble. Were you able to meet locals and have local friends as well, or was it mostly just within your school?
At that age, we did have some local students there, but yeah, 100% you're right about the bubble. But hey, at that age, you're a young little shit. You don't know anything. You think you know the whole. Oh, so obviously different story, right? Naturally, you'll have friends. You're older, you're more mature. I started obviously having friends from expat friends and local. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. When you moved back from Australia, and then you started working in China then?
Yeah. When I got there, so obviously, yeah, I was things to do through my connection. He had been living there for so long. He knew people that could help basically. And because I was going back to study part-time at the time, and through his friends, I met my family-run wine distribution company, and we clicked because he's by pure luck, he's Scottish Australian from Scotland, but in Singapore. I mean, eventually he migrated his whole family to Australia. I got along with him very well because I was living in Australia for and being Scottish, but yeah, he knew how to take the piss. Him eventually he went from a part-time job to a full-time job, did the wine, continued doing wine distribution. Eventually we merged with wine company. And yeah, just did that. So, yeah, long story short, my ex-boss passed away in China. The company was basically, and eventually I started. One of my clients at the time had a run, obviously selling wine, and most of my clients were restaurants or hotels and stuff. And had a really good filler, and they needed a new manager, and we always got, and they felt I could for them. They took me on as a restaurant manager, and at the time I was trying to figure out what was next to do, because I stuck it out with the wine company for that long, partly because export. We were close. We were like family. Him and his son, we are both really good friends. His wife really looked after me. But after he passed on, things were different, right? So I figured, I'll give a restaurant try. I had in Starbucks, or that was my first job as a teenager. So I've always been coffee, wine, that kind of stuff. So I was like, all right, okay, seems like the right fit, give it a go. Yeah, we did that for 1 year. And unfortunately, even though our restaurant was pretty popular and doing all due to landlord issues, I think with small businesses, basically the landlord wanted to take the space back because they were upgrading the whole area, so we shut. So I was in between looking for new opportunities. So I had to train jiu-jitsu. And I met one of my training partners at the time was actually friends with one of my old friends in Australia. How small the world is, right? And he moved to Shanghai because his wife's Shanghainese, and he was working for this startup company, which was doing food tech. They needed help. And I was like, hey, I'm interested. I've always wanted to move to Shanghai. Even though I was visiting Shanghai a lot, I wanted to live in Shanghai. And it sounded really cool, but basically that was a fresh startup. And yeah, negotiated with him to see if I can help out, if they were interested in hiring. At that time, they were waiting waiting for the next round of investment before they could hire. So I said, look, I'm free right now. How about I just work for free? I'll come in. I'll just work for free. Just give it a go. If you like me, great. If you don't, at least I know I gave it a try. And I did that for no pay. I think back and forth between Suzhou and Shanghai because at that time I didn't have money to move to Shanghai. I was still staying in Suzhou. It went really well. Got along with the team and jumped on that, did that. And it was one of the best experiences worldwide I ever had working in that startup. Exciting, but up and down. Did that for 2.5 years. It didn't work. We pivoted and didn't quite agree to the direction in which we pivoted. And in the end, I jumped on to another food tech startup, which was doing reservations, especially in Singapore, but they have presence in Shanghai.
Wow. So
that's pretty unusual.
I wanted to ask you, because I think it's pretty unusual to work somewhere with no pay. I always hear stories about that, about, oh yeah, you should just do whatever you can to get your foot in the door. But I don't think I've actually met anybody who's actually done that. Was that your own idea that you brought up, or did they ask you to do that first? How did it happen?
Oh, I did it. Yeah, I just proposed. It was because I was in between jobs and we had already closed the restaurant. I was trying to figure out the next thing to do. And the product that was really a team one with my boss at the time. I got along with him. And I was like, why not? I'll give it a go. I had saved up enough anyway that I could, and I'm single, right? No family, no kid. I don't have massive overhead. And I had side gig, which was coaching kids on the side that was on my expense. So I just gave it a try. I'll give it a try. See if I like what it is, because I was very familiar with the tech startup space at the time. There was it, and I didn't even know there was that the tech startup space is there was such a thing going around. Yeah, and I took a risk.
That's really cool. Actually, I think there may have been some slight overlap. I first lived in Shanghai from 2005 to 2007. And then I moved back in 2013 and moved to Singapore in 2014. But for that year and a half, I was back in Shanghai for the second time, I worked because it's pretty difficult to find a job. My Mandarin is not good enough to work completely doing everything in Chinese. So company I found to work for was an e-commerce startup, but it was founded by the guy you probably know, the food delivery company that was in Shanghai called Sherpas.
Yeah, I'm familiar with it. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
you work for them, or you work for the guy that started?
It was the second company that he started. Basically, Sherpas was going along quite well. I mean, they missed out. They could have been huge because they were doing food delivery before anybody else was, but they weren't. I don't think they could scale fast enough, and they didn't know enough about tech to do apps and all this sort of thing.
Yeah.
People eventually did, or even just take the idea from Uber Eats or whoever. Because the model wasn't quite the same as how we do it with Grab and Foodpanda and everybody. They had their own fleet of drivers, if I recall correctly. So that model was probably pretty difficult to scale. And they would never cut on with the Chinese community. I think they mostly had expat foreign foods, Western food restaurants in their service. But no, so I worked he founded I guess he was bored. So he founded a second company. And so that's where I was working. But it's interesting that you were in the F&B space so much in Shanghai, because I think that it's, from when I went back last year, it's really evolved from 10 years ago. It's a completely different environment now.
Okay, so even the delivery environment right now, I'm sure while you're back there, you saw how that is just, it's like Grab delivery on steroids. All fast, accessible. Even the prices were just low. Simple things like the packaging it comes is just next level, man. Next level.
Then where did Jiu-jitsu come into the picture? When did you start training?
Wow, it's a long story. Do you have time?
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
When I was back in Singapore, I happened to be lucky to go to a high school in Singapore, which was very strong on sports. And I was always into sports. I was never particularly good at it. I was into sports, never particularly good at it. Academically, I wasn't the best, but I enjoyed sports. And I enjoyed the grind of training and playing sports. And it always kept me grounded and disciplined. I'm the high school kid. I played a lot of different sports. Everyone played football during the recess and stuff. I played rugby for a little bit, pivoted to do track and field. Eventually, as I got to my later teens and young adulthood, I found my footing in and sports. Actually made it to the national junior training. Raced a few races, ample races for my for Singapore and stuff. But I thought I'll continue training in Australia. I'll go to university. I'll continue to train hard. But when I got to Australia with the university load, studying load, and then I realized, I'm a wuss when it comes to the cold. So I'll go up cycling. I'll be freezing my ass. I basically slowly lost interest in training. And at that time, away from my family again. I basically started partying way too much. And then I got myself into trouble, even falling into depression. And basically, one day, obviously with support and stuff, and wondering, I'm quite a focused kid. With regard, I had planned things I wanted to do. How did I go so astray? And I realized I stopped doing sports. One thing that kept me to get back to sports, regain my confidence, get me grounded again, try to change my life. But I'll go back into training trial. I'll still in Australia, still 4-season country, maybe in summer I'll start training, and then when it goes to winter, I'll stop. And I was worried I'll lose focus. So I was like, okay, I need something else. What did I always wanted to do that I never got a chance to? And I was always into martial art, watching martial art films, action films. So I was like, all right, okay. I always wanted to try Muay Thai. I'll give Muay Thai a try. Local gym, the one nearest to my place, started Muay Thai. And during that process, two of my friends that we used to party together, they stopped partying and they're doing a lot. They started doing jiu-jitsu, and they were like, you should come do jiu-jitsu, because they heard I was doing Muay Thai. And I didn't know what it was, right? I didn't even watch the UFC back then. I just wanted to train Muay Thai. And one of my basically told me what the UFC was and invited me to go to his gym to try out jiu-jitsu. I tried it. Honestly, at the time, I didn't really like it, but I was like, hey, come in. So I'm not really training this striking. I need to learn the groundwork. It just so happened my gym also had a jiu-jitsu program, but the focus was the jiu-jitsu. So I'll go a few classes to continue training and stuff. But eventually, this was my tail end of Australia. So I left Australia, moved to Shanghai, and moved to China, Shanghai, Suzhou, and I wanted to continue training. But at the time, I still didn't really like it. I just knew I wanted to keep training Muay Thai, learn the world. Maybe someday I want to do MMA. Everybody has that idea to be a fighter. Couldn't really find any good Muay Thai gyms, but the gym that I found, the Shanghai BJJ. Yeah, class I found, I gravitated towards the Jiu-Jitsu class better. It had a nicer community because the Muay Thai program was just value add, right? It wasn't the main focus because they're called Shanghai BJJ. Yeah, and then eventually I had to Shanghai BJJ about living in Suzhou. And basically no gyms in Suzhou, not find anything. So I had to travel back and forth between Shanghai and Suzhou during my holiday just to train a little bit of jiu-jitsu. And I remember one of the trips back to Shanghai BJJ, I ran into this Scottish guy and I overheard him. He's, oh yeah, I live in Suzhou. I was like, oh wait, you live in Suzhou? All right. Yeah, I live in Suzhou too. Let's stay connected. And yeah, we exchanged contact numbers. So when we were in Suzhou, I got in touch with him and we trained together. And you're going to the whole story of how the whole gym and club started. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, let's get into that in a minute, but let's go back to when you first started training martial arts.
Yeah.
I think it's great, obviously, that you turned things around and that you had friends to support you. But was your plan working before? How long did it work? How long before you left Australia did you start training and stop the partying and all that?
I think not very long, to be honest, maybe 6 months and a little bit more.
Was there a worry that when you were now changing environments again, that you might go back to the old habits and not keep being disciplined?
A little bit, for sure. That's why I be online hunting for jiu-jitsu in Shanghai to make sure that I can stay active. I can something to tie me down. They keep me grounded.
And so was it like a very sudden switch? Did the theory work that if you got back into sports that you'd cut down on the partying, or was it more of a gradual kind of change?
At least there was something. Yeah, I don't want to say like immediately I was full discipline. It was definitely a gradual thing. But the main thing was just building the habit rather than just sitting on your ass doing nothing. Time, I need to go train. All right. So just go there. Yeah. Just go to training. Don't get distracted. Yeah. So it definitely was a gradual thing. And then eventually you start doing training, then you start increasing your training volume and you start to go, then eventually the idea of I need, how do I get or just train more? Yeah. And through that process, eventually you're like, I need to start cutting out stuff and studying and cut back on. Yeah, just to try to be more focused.
And so you mentioned depression. Do you think that was more because of the kind of habits and lifestyle you were living, or was it that you didn't have maybe a goal or something that you were trying to push yourself towards?
Without going into too much detail, because it was a whole array of personal problems, and all just happen after another, and you just slowly fall into a deeper and deeper hole until you realize life. And I think the funny thing is, you don't realize you're depressed. You don't understand that it's like why things are the way they are until somebody sits you down and goes, I think you're depressed. And I think it was lucky for me. I did have, at that time, my friends were looking out for me. And when they said that, then a light bulb came on. Oh, is that what it is? And then at that time, I remember they gave like form and for you to take the boxes and stuff. And the diagnosis came back and said, yeah. And you were like, oh, that explains why I am the way you are. I am acting the way I am. And that's when you need to, then that's when it is on you to tell whether you want to improve, change things, be better. Yeah, that's all falls on you. That click that, was basically like a wake up call. Now, whether or not I took the right step, it took some time to get there, but yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I think people often talk about how there's a bigger stigma in Asia or in Asian families around mental health and these kind of things. First of all, do you think that being in Australia made it easier for you to have friends that would sit you down and say, I think you should see somebody about getting help?
Yeah, being, like I said, like a very traditional Singaporean Chinese family, I don't say relatively conservative, I would say. That stigma, that's something you don't say it. It's embarrassing. Even though I was young, but I think that upbringing, so there's nothing wrong with it. Shouldn't admit, like, to be fair, at that time, I don't even know. Like I was in massive funk. Yeah, definitely being Australia where it's a little bit more open-minded, where you just talk about it. And that's why I'm quite open when people meet, because through that experience, I learned it's better to talk about it. Don't try to hold back, and we should not have this stigma and not talk about things.
And then did you share with your family that you were going through this, or did you keep it to yourself?
Mainly my brother. Yeah, I'll say, I think my mom and dad figured out, but I didn't believe. I think they, say it because I don't think they would have understand at the time.
It sounds like you're one of the stories we always talk about jiu-jitsu saving people's lives, but you're one of the stories where it definitely had a big impact on. So so then you're back in China and you're going back and forth to Shanghai to train, and eventually you founded a gym in Suzhou, right?
Yeah. So what happened was, like I mentioned, when I was visiting Shanghai BJJ at the time, I wasn't regular student, like maybe every couple of months if I had a break, or that I could take the train down to Shanghai, go train. I met this other guy there, we connected. And he's a blue belt in Jiu-jitsu. And he was one I'm training partner to train with. And I got in touch with him. He is an internet teacher in Suzhou. And at that time, we're like, yeah, let's find time to train. Monday to Friday, he's just way too busy with school. And he was like, how about this Saturday? Let's find time to train. He literally invited me over his class in the school, and we will lay out kites. And luckily, it's carpet floor, and then with the mat, so it's okay. In it, and I remember the headmaster would walk past and yeah, he would stick his in. Oh, you guys are training. Good on you guys, man. Walk away. So we did that for a while. I think he felt it was appropriate to keep doing that because I'm not really part of the school. We're using the school's property. And his wife was very supportive of him. I actually found a dance studio in his neighborhood that had a space and asked them if we could rent the space to train jiu-jitsu when they're not using it. And the lady was pretty supportive. She had opened a new studio. It's literally like a dance studio, yoga studio. And so we rented a saw mat. And we're like, all right, let's make this. Put it out there. If anyone interested, we'll invite Sophie to help cover the rent. And yeah, basically we started Suzhou's first jiu-jitsu club. Literally just the interest out. And we only would train twice a week, Tuesday night, Thursday night. They will finish kids dance. We'll be waiting outside. These bunch of guys outside. The kids will go away. We'll rush in, lay out the summit, train for an hour and a half in the mat, dismantle the mat, make sure it's presentable again, and do that again on Thursday. So we did that for about a year and a little bit more. And then my partner, the Scottish guy, him and his family decided to move back to Indonesia because his wife's Indonesian. And I was only a white belt. He was a blue belt. So when he left, all the responsibility fell on me to continue coaching as a white belt to keep the club going because we already had members who were interested who liked jiu-jitsu and wanted to keep training. And all the responsibility fell on me to figure that my brother had moved wasn't together with me too, so he would help me. And basically I had to figure out how to coach. And I wanted to continue to grow so that's why I made a conscious effort that at Shanghai, even if it's just for a few hours, to train at Shanghai BJJ to learn, bring that what I learned, and teach my students. I do that with no intention of getting belted or whatever. Obviously, it would be nice, right? You can't always have a white belt coaching as always. But my main focus was to learn, get better. So I did that. Thursday, coach the students. On Saturdays, I'll travel, take the train down to Shanghai, train a couple of hours, take it back to Suzhou, and then just keep. Eventually, I report with my coach. He ref competitions, but I wouldn't be competing under Shanghai BJJ to compete under our club banner. And I had some success, started doing well, managed to build a good rapport with my coach. And he recognized that I can only be there once a week. And he gave me my blue belt. Yeah. And that's how I decided to be more tied up with Shanghai BJJ. And during the process, the club was running. We kept going for another 2 or 3 more years. Met my current Chinese business partner. He was in May. He's a PT and stuff. He does private for fitness and boxing and stuff. And he wanted to learn more on the ground game. He found our listing online. He came to visit our gym. We stayed connected. We were trained together whenever he can because he was busy on the other side of Suzhou doing his PTs and stuff. And eventually one day, long story short, I said, how about we something together, open the gym together, and you can be the jiu-jitsu coach. And I was like, yes, I'm interested. But I have and this part of Suzhou where my club is already at, so that I can go to. He agreed. And basically, again, long story short, we started him and together. And one of my conditions was like, we have to be officially affiliated with Shanghai BJJ because that's where I got my blue belt from. And if we want to grow the community, we need a bigger team to support it. So I got ourselves affiliated, and my coach was always super supportive about what I did in Suzhou, supported me with not just training, advice on how to run the gym, how to grow the gym. And yeah, now it's been 15 years. We just celebrate our 10 plus 5, 50-year anniversary just last month in Suzhou.
Wow, congratulations. That's really cool. So there's a couple of things I want to dig into there. But first of all, how do you think that affected you, both your jiu-jitsu growth personally, but then also your teaching, having to teach people that early on in your experience? And it sounds like you would go basically learn something at Shanghai BJJ and then take that back and teach that technique to the club in Suzhou, right?
Yeah. Not do my homework. I had to buy videos at the time, I had to buy DVDs. Okay, Shanghai and China is easier to get the pirated one too. So just getting the pirated instructional, learning from those. I think what really got from Shanghai BJJ on my coach is like structure. How to structure classes. Learn from all resources. I don't want to from DVD. When you go visit other gyms, whenever I came back to Singapore, or when I go visit other gyms, like picking up bits and pieces and finding out what works, basically. Yeah, just understanding how to coach. I literally had an on the go. I think one of the biggest things is understand that every practitioner is different. Because I straight away assume, like I said, I was always into sports, right? I always kept myself active when I was younger. I always assumed things like drills, they should be able to figure this out, how to do it. But you have to realize everyone from a different sporting background, some don't even have any sporting background, and they might not be able to figure out the basic movements, and how can you break it down in a way that they understand and understand that some guy.
I think that's really a good point, because I think and some people just get it faster than others too, even if they don't have the sporting background, but something about jiu-jitsu, they can just understand it more quickly, and other people like myself, take a little bit longer to learn things. I also wanted to ask you about starting the business and how that experience was like. It sounded like when you first started the club, it was pretty organic and grew by itself, or I mean, you helped promote it and everything, but there wasn't probably as much pressure when it was more of a casual thing than when you actually had a business partner and found an official business. So what was that like?
I don't want to say like I know all the ins and outs about starting a business. I was doing what I like to do and approached by the right people. And you lived in China before. I don't know if you agree with me on this. One of the difference about doing business in China is quite different. Doing business in Singapore is that, and its business culture is largely dependent on relationships, guanxi, trust, and loyalty. Things are not so black and white, right? Because even though you have everything down black and white, the courts might not local. It probably won't favor you. For me, my business partner approached me. We had trust each other, and it was a bit of give and take. Without going into too much, I basically said, rather than me just take it, no, let's do things a bit differently. Let's hope keeping the business alive so that our student, have a place to train, rather than just thinking about the dollars and cents, about the profit. Basically, me taking less or even taking a salary, let's just focus on, And also the difference in China, like the startup cost to start a small business is way lower than Singapore. Like in a city like low.
That makes sense. And so then when did you make that transition to being a full-time jiu-jitsu coach and stopping with working full-time for other places?
Yeah. So basically, tech startup job I was with didn't work out. Expectations wise, then didn't work out basically. And I was in between jobs. What makes for me, because industry, it's either I go back to managing, because I was in food tech, right? I said B tech. There's only that many platforms you can work for, really, right? When you think about it. And my money is not good enough. Conversation wise, it's fine, but it's not good enough to work in like the big platform, something like Dianping and stuff. And even then, there's no reason for them to hire, right? Because a lot more expensive. I probably don't understand the local market as much as a local would. So if my choices were, do I want to go back to be managing a restaurant or F&B group and stuff? Do I want to do something myself? So that I enjoy. So it's something sports related, jiu-jitsu related, martial related. So I was applying for jobs, had a few things lined up. Came, Chinese New Year was 2020 Chinese New Year. Came back for a holiday. I was like, okay, I have few offers, potential offers on the table. I'll come back, take a breather, clear my head, and then I'll make a decision which offer I'll take. So, but the whole COVID happened here, stuck in Singapore, and I'm hoping to open up so I can go back to China and just don't have to do assembly the guys. Every time in Singapore, I'll train with the guys. They needed a new coach. I was available. It was originally going to be a temporary thing. I was like, okay, now I always wanted to try doing something for myself and doing it full time. I like something that I enjoy and doing it full time. I'll give it a go. It was originally supposed to be 6 months, but who thought China took so long to open up and do not.
Wow. Yeah. So you said you ended up getting stuck in Singapore, but the alternative of being stuck in Shanghai, I think, would have been a lot worse.
Yeah, but true. Okay, so yeah, that you're not wrong. But don't forget there was a period where, where they stayed closed, but everything inside China was open for a good 2 years. So at that time, obviously, you were bummed out when we were still going the restrictions here. And I'm like, everything in China is open. It's only later on you got crazy again. But yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So has there been any point since you started coaching full time here in Singapore that you've thought about going back and working in F&B or tech or any other sort of non-coaching role?
I think definitely still think about it from time to time. Like I do China, I do miss Shanghai. I just came back from a trip last month and we realized how much I missed the place. But also being away from almost live outside of Singapore almost half my life, almost not quite, made me realize too that being away for so long, I do need to set. I think right now it's just try to build that base first, then I'll figure out what's next. Yeah. Whether is it to go back or something. We'll see.
And are your parents still in China or are they here?
No, they're here. They're retired now. They're back here in Singapore.
Okay, yeah. So it's a good time to spend more time with them as well.
Exactly, because my parents are getting older. Yeah, probably could spend some time here with them.
So one other thing I wanted to ask you about is, at least as far as the ratio for the population, BJJ is not nearly as big in China as it is in Singapore. We have probably 15 or 20 or more gyms for...
More than that, yeah.
More than that, right? So for 7 million people. Any thoughts on why it's more popular here than it seems like it is in China?
Okay, I think a couple of factors. I think, Jiu-jitsu is a niche sport. It's really quite a niche sport. For us, we are already in the scene, so for us it's like our whole thing, but it is really a niche sport. I think, for one, in China, sports and recreation, doing sports as a recreation, really only started being mainstream in the last decade. Now people have more disposable income. They're thinking about the health. They want to get fit and stuff. So when they want to do that, first natural inclination is not to go, I want to do jiu-jitsu. It's only if you watch combat sport that you go, hey, this looks cool. I want to learn jiu-jitsu. So naturally you go into things. Doing more mainstream sport would do it, even if it's on the recreation. How do you want to think it or not? I want to get way better shape on it. Jack. You'll go probably think about going fitness, CrossFit, whatever. And I think it's just a matter for that catches up in terms of ratio. There is really a lot of gyms right now in Shanghai compared to back then, and even more sprouting up small ones. But definitely it's not at that level of in terms of ratio or practitioners to population size. Definitely there compared to Singapore. And I also think another thing is you got to credit one championship. I think that being based in Singapore, put in Singapore, I would say. Because naturally, our jiu-jitsu, if MMA gets big, naturally jiu-jitsu will follow. Yeah, so I think that helped the growth of jiu-jitsu in Singapore and obviously the UFC.
And even just the practicality of having time when the Shanghai is so big and it takes so long to go anywhere, to be able to stop by and train somewhere after work. I think probably a lot of people just don't have time. So I think one question that I always like to ask my guests is, if I talk to you again in 5 years, let's say, and what would the next 5 years, looking back, what would it be? Are some things that you would share for you to consider yourself the next 5 years to be a success for yourself?
And it's a tough one, man. I don't know. I always hate these global interview questions. They ask you, what's your 3-year plan, 5-year plan? I don't know. Because goals change. Obviously, when I was younger, I always had this idea that I like to be able to see how competitive I can get, because of my previous competitive sporting background. But now that I'm older and all these injuries are coming up, that really focus how well can I do on a competition scene. I think right now my main focus is just spreading the art, basically jiu-jitsu, because it's an important role in my life. Whether jiu-jitsu or any martial arts has always played an important part in my life. Building a strong community, whether it be it in my gym in Suzhou or in Singapore with the community, making and doing what I'm passionate about and improve their life. Yeah, and obviously through that process, if they do well in tournaments, more focus on just more people doing jiu-jitsu, join jiu-jitsu. And yeah, just I'll be happy if they come to me, man. Jiu-jitsu really, I don't want to keep using the cliche that jiu-jitsu changed their lives, but if they come to me, my life is better because now I have something to focus on, which is, and jiu-jitsu happens to be that activity.
Awesome. It was great talking to you today. If people want to find you or your gym in Suzhou and where you coach in Singapore, where can they find you?
Yeah. Instagram will be easiest. You can find me Pandoramic, Panda. That's my nickname, and Pandoramic because the wordplay on Panoramic. But yeah, it's an old handle. Just kept it. You can find me on Facebook, Kenneth Tay. If you want to follow my Instagram page for Jiu-Jitsu, you can look for it, Trinity Combat Sports. You can find me there, or even on Xiaohongshu. I'm there, Pandoramic. Yeah. If you follow Chinese media. Yeah. If not, just come by them. And yeah, come do some jiu-jitsu.
Awesome. Thanks. We'll put the links in the show notes. Thanks again. I'll talk to you soon, Kenneth.
Thanks for having me, man. Good chat.
Thank you for listening to Before We Get There with your host, Nicholas Braman. Please like and subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You can also find us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at Before We Get There Podcast. New episodes are released every Thursday morning. See you next time.